welcome to part 9. This is sanding out, the final sand out. The way it works is you got to go in with some pretty rough sandpaper to get them craters out, you know, because it craters up. And you can see here, I'll try to make it as visual as possible. This is sanding it with 60 grit right here. Okay, you can see how it's smooth, and then you can see over here how it's really orange peeled. I always call it the craters of the moon because it's pretty rough. You know, it's not like painting a car with paint from acrylic lacquer or acrylic enamel or something like that, where it goes on really smooth. You know, this goes on really rough because you're doing this backwards. Remember, you don't gel coat a boat like this when you build the boat. It's a completely different process. The ass backwards way of doing it. But the results are just as good. It's just a lot more work to do it. So this is a 60 grit here that I do with my DA, and it'll look like this. And as I sand it, I'll sand it to where all those little pits will go smooth, you know. So you have to watch. See, there's a couple little areas right here that's kind of hard to see. I think I just wiped them out. Maybe I can kind of scratch them up a little bit. It's kind of hard to see. But you can see how there's like little shiny dots right there. You know, little shiny dots right here. See, these are, you can see how the dust has got into these little things, and I can scratch it out. I can scratch it out of those little things. Anyway, that's what I'm sanding off. So I'm sanding it down and watching it very carefully as I sand it, because you don't want to go too far, because you'll just sand it right off. So what I do is I go on with the DA and kind of rough sand it, and then I'll go to finer grits, as you can see right here. I'll go to some finer grits to get that shine. I think this one here was done 400 grit, and I may go to 800 and to 1,000 grit. But you can see the difference between just the natural shine of this, and we'll even polish it and high polish it, and it'll come out even, you know, more shiny than that, you know, more smooth. Now I have another sander that I'm going to switch to, because what I do is I do the DA, and then I go to the flat sander, or the straight sander, or the inline sander, or whatever you want to call it. I'll go to that to make sure that I'm keeping the boat flat. You'll see as this part unfolds. And there. Now I've inline sanded where I just used the DA. just to make sure that the DA isn't gouging in the surface, because we still want to maintain, you know, a nice surface, as nice as possible. We don't want it real ripply and bumpy and lumpy, right? We want it to be perfect. And so I always like to at least sand it nice and straight in a line while I'm doing roughing. When you get to the finishing part of it, you can go straight to a DA, or also use the flat sander or the longboard sander, or whatever you want to call it, on the finer grits also. The DA, you know, it depends on what you prefer. Sometimes I think the DA is a little faster, but this is pretty fast too. So I always try to go back and forth and mix and match it. Sometimes you can't use the flat sander in areas because it's not flat. Only in the flat areas you can really use the flat sander, unless it's like a convex radius where you're going around something. You know, you're going around something. If you know, sometimes it's really good also. An inline sander will get you inside of a corner too, you know, this way. But up here, say up here, you know, that's not going to be good because you're touching here and here. You might be able to do it like this and run it down this way because it slopes, you know. But here you can move this like this on these radiuses. It just depends on what shape you're going for. So you just sand it down really smooth, go through the grits. I'm starting with about 60 grit. I use about 100 grit. Oh, I think this might be 80 grit. I think this is 80 grit, yes. So I'm using 60 grit on the DA, and I'm using 80 grit on the inline sander. And then, you know, I think I have just this section left. I've already done the rest of the boat with the coarse stuff. So in other words, it all looks smooth like this on the rest of the boat. And I would say it's probably taken me 20-30 hours to sand it all out. And then as I go through the finer grits, it will go a lot faster, because the first one taking all of this roughness off is the longest process. To go through the rest of the processes of the different grits of sandpaper will go much faster in comparison. So hopefully in part 10 I'll be buffing this thing out. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We'll see you next time at part 10.